My name is Richard Flamer, and I've been in Central America for the better part of 30 years now. 8 years in Guatemala, 2 years in El Salvador, various visits through Honduras, and some years in Nicaragua. I currently live in Chiapas, Mexico, where my wife and I have a small Catholic worker farm. Started with a trip to the refugee camps in Mexico of Guatemalan refugees. It would have been 82, 83. There were 90,000 Guatemalan refugees. So many of those refugees had fled the fighting in Guatemala. 30-year war, which was in many cases a genocidal war with the Indians. Followed that up with working for Archbishop Gerardi in Guatemala, who ran a forensic team to cover the mass graves. I then understood why there were so many refugees in Mexico. The first grave I worked at was a place called Rio Negro. 750 women, children, and old people were massacred by paramilitary squads. The women and children that were killed were largely young. When they tired of them, they shot them, buried them in a mass grave there. The second grave was at a place in lower Coban. When we uncovered the graves, one mass grave, there were still children at the breast of the mothers, which indicated that they'd been alive when they were burned alive. For the most part, those people in the refugee camps were simply trying to live their lives. I wandered off and on into Honduras, where the effects of the U.S. military were really extreme. The corruption grew as the U.S. presence grew in the region. American presence has ruined the lives and the economies of each of those countries. Towards the end of the Salvadoran War and after the peace accords in '92, the U.S. started shipping all these gang kids back to El Salvador. That's the beginnings of gangs in Latin America. People don't realize that a war has effects that last for literally generations. The caravans were formed as a kind of self-defense because of the drug lords. All the caravans start out in large numbers and end up being relatively small by the time they hit the border. And part of that is Mexico's effort to incorporate some of the people into their culture. People were peeling off all the time to go to Mexico City, to go to Veracruz, where they happen to have relatives or something of that nature. The other thing that's really important to stress is that most of these people would not leave their country if they didn't have to. People are coming here not because they necessarily want to. They just don't see any alternatives from where they are.
What would you say to folks here currently, worried about this horde of whatever the president's...
I would say it's fucking absurd.
Yeah.
Don't people ever think about immigration historically? They're really some of the best citizens that I've ever encountered. It seems to me that they're a real treasure. They're a big wealth to this country. And the women, they work so hard. Great folks. I have never seen a Middle Easterner in any of those countries. The gang members are not about to march with a group like that. Those people are marching in Caravan in a group so that the gang members won't come near them. This rhetoric is just awful. It's just atrocious. A demagogue, that's what he is. I mean, I come up here from Chiapas and I don't understand it. We live with the poor, and we're not poor. We're rich. We really are rich. I come up here and I look around and I don't understand it. I don't get it. I personally feel like I'm the most blessed guy in the world. I get to be amongst those people, the people of Guatemala, the people of Salvador. My wife's an indigenous woman from Mexico. I just feel like I have the best life in the world.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.